Hi, my name is Kristy and I will be your host for this presentation. For the next 5 minutes I will be discussing effective pedagogical practice for the primary school teacher. The objective of this video is to provide valuable information to the beginning teacher. The presentation runs for only 5 minutes, so I won't be able to cover all theories and practices associated with pedagogical practice. We'll begin by looking at what is meant by effective pedagogy. We will then move on to holistic approaches to teaching, and I'll discuss 2 educational learning theories. I will conclude my presentation by looking at how all of this would work in a remote Indigenous student classroom. The definitions of pedagogy are numerous. For the purpose of this presentation, Smith describes pedagogy as more than just delivering education. He describes pedagogy as the art, science and craft of teaching. Art referring to the creative responsive part of teaching, craft referring to skills and practices of teaching, and science referring to associated theories and learning. Ultimately, effective pedagogy results in sound student learning. For a teacher to take an effective pedagogical approach to their classroom, they must consider a holistic approach to teaching, or in other words, they must teach the whole child. In order to do this, they'll need to understand and consider student wellbeing and pastoral care, effective teaching practices for good academic outcomes, as well as classroom resourcing. Student wellbeing and pastoral care. Masters describes 5 aspects of wellbeing as a framework for thinking about students' growth and development: emotional, mental, physical, social, and mental. While I don't have time to outline the specifics of these areas, I encourage you as beginning teachers to further investigate each area. The teacher with an understanding of the 5 different aspects of wellbeing and its relationship to education is not only able to recognise and assist when a student's lack of wellbeing is impacting on their learning, but further promote health, development and wellbeing in their classroom. According to Marshall, wellbeing is an important contributing factor to learner engagement and integral to learning. In research conducted on pastoral care programs in Australia, pastoral care aims to promote health and wellbeing, resilience, academic care and social capital. Pastoral care crosses into many areas, including casework, bullying, control discipline, pastoral management, welfare network and pastoral curriculum. This assessment is particularly focused on the last area of pastoral curriculum and its link to effective pedagogical practices. Effective pedagogical practices support and promote academic care. Teachers are able to build protective factors and preventative resiliency in their students through their teaching. As a result, students are more self-efficient and empowered. They are able to take healthy risks and are able to set achievable goals, as well as negotiate and reflect when required. In essence, children are able to reach their full potential. Effective teaching practices for good academic outcome occur when teachers are able to identify individual student learning needs and adapt their practice to respond to these needs. It also occurs when teachers are able to reflect on and understand their own practice and how this is affecting student achievement. Effective teaching practices rely on teachers being able to competently select and use high-quality resources, such as IT devices and age-appropriate games. Teachers need to be aware of the design of the classroom. Students learn best when the classroom is a happy, supportive and engaging place. Finally, effective pedagogical practices is research-based, so let's consider 2 different theories of learning. Communities of practice is a perspective of learning that moves away from learning as a cognitive, behaviourist process to one which incorporates a more collaborative and socially interactive process of learning. Payne, 2010. Constructivism also takes a social perspective on learning. This theory describes learning as an active process in which we construct knowledge and meaning from experience in both an individual and social context. So how then does all this theory look in practice? Let's take a look at an effective pedagogical approach to the whole Indigenous child in a remote Indigenous classroom. Firstly, let me consider wellbeing and pastoral care. Teachers should strive to understand and gain knowledge of Indigenous cultural sensitivities and living conditions, as well as aim to establish strong relationships with their students, their families and the community. Health is particularly relevant in remote communities, with statistics outlined by the Department of Education in 2002 that indicate up to 80% of the children in a classroom may be experiencing chronic ear infection that can result in hearing loss at any one time. Effective teachings in the Indigenous classroom should take into account a student's cultural, social and contextual view. A teacher should take an explicit and holistic approach to learning by starting with the overall concept of the task prior to beginning the task. Learning should be repetitive and revised often, and include scaffolding, visual, hands-on and concrete learning techniques. Teachers should also incorporate storytelling and linking learning to land. In order to prevent student embarrassment and shame, collaborative small group work is encouraged in the classroom. Indirect questioning techniques and consensual group decisions are preferred. The setup of the classroom in group tables, therefore, would be one resource the teachers need to consider in order to support this Indigenous pedagogical approach. This pedagogical approach to teaching the remote Indigenous classroom supports both constructivism and communities of practice learning theory. That is, the students' learning is encouraged through working alongside others and building up upon experience and knowledge. Today I've discussed some of the contributing factors to encourage you as the beginning teacher to take an effective pedagogical approach to teaching in your primary school classroom. I hope that by giving you an example of a remote Indigenous classroom, you are able to gain insight into how theory can relate to practice. Thank you for listening.